Step away from her. The man in the wet black jacket shouted, his voice cutting through the rain like a siren, but Ethan Walker did not step away. He stood between the billionaire and the men blocking the narrow bridge, one hand resting calmly on the open door of the SUV, the other raised just enough to show he wanted no trouble. Behind him, Charlotte Whitmore sat frozen in the back seat, her phone dead, her security team scattered, her billion-dollar world suddenly reduced to flashing hazard lights, broken glass on the pavement, and one broke single dad driver she had hired less than a day ago. "You're just the driver," one of them said. "Then let me drive her out of here," Ethan answered. "Not happening. Then we have a problem." The rain hammered the roof of the SUV, steady and cold, running down Ethan's face and soaking the collar of the cheap gray shirt he had ironed that morning in his tiny apartment, while his 8-year-old daughter slept under a faded quilt. The city skyline glowed a few miles behind them, bright and untouchable, but out here, under the dead streetlights and the low rumble of thunder, there were no boardrooms, no private elevators, no polished security briefings. There was only fear, breath, timing, and the quiet dignity of a man who had spent years trying not to become the weapon the world had once trained him to be. Charlotte had seen powerful men all her life. Men who raised their voices. Men who bought loyalty. Men who mistook volume for strength. But Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not curse. He did not shake. He simply looked at the road, the bridge rail, the blocked lane, the reflection of two figures moving in the side mirror, and the fear in her eyes. "Mr. Walker," she whispered, barely able to speak. "Please don't do anything reckless." Ethan glanced back at her for half a second, and somehow, even in the storm, his eyes were gentle. "Ma'am, reckless is what people do when they don't have a plan." The man in front laughed once, hard and nervous. "You think this is a movie?" Ethan slowly removed his seat belt from where it had been looped around the door handle, not as a threat, not as a performance, but with the calm precision of someone who had used ordinary things in extraordinary moments before. "No," he said. "I think you picked the wrong car." Something shifted then. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough for everyone to feel it. The men stopped smiling. Charlotte stopped breathing so fast. Even the rain seemed to soften around him. Hours earlier, she had thought Ethan Walker was just a desperate father with worn shoes, kind manners, and a clean driving record. She had not known about the folded flag in his closet, the Navy SEAL photograph hidden behind his daughter's school drawings, or the name commanders once spoke with respect and enemies never forgot. She only knew what she saw now, a quiet man standing in the rain, protecting her not because she was rich, not because she was important, but because leaving someone behind was not in him. And as the first siren wailed somewhere far off in the distance, Ethan took one steady step forward and said the words that made Charlotte Whitmore's entire world go silent. "Stay behind me." 24 hours before the rain, before the blocked bridge, before Charlotte Whitmore would hear the name Ethan Walker spoken with a kind of reverence that money could not purchase, he stood behind the service entrance of the Hawthorne Grand Hotel with a paper cup of gas station coffee cooling in his hand and a job application folded twice in his jacket pocket. The morning air smelled like wet pavement, exhaust, and fresh bread drifting from the hotel kitchen. Valets in pressed uniforms moved luxury cars through the curved driveway as if each vehicle were part of a quiet parade, and Ethan stood just outside that world, clean-shaven, tired-eyed, wearing his best shirt under an old navy coat whose cuffs had been repaired by hand. He had $12 in his wallet, a quarter tank of gas, and a hospital bill on his kitchen table that he had read so many times the paper had softened at the corners. "You here for deliveries?" the hiring manager asked, looking at him without really seeing him. "Driver position," Ethan said. "Temporary executive transport." The manager glanced at his shoes, then at the old truck parked half a block away. "Experience?" "I have driven in difficult conditions." "That means what, snow?" "Among other things." The man gave a short laugh and tapped the clipboard against his palm. "Listen, we have clients worth more than this entire block. They expect polish. Quiet. Professional." Ethan nodded once. "I understand quiet." That should have been enough, but people who mistake humility for weakness often keep pushing until they expose themselves. "Any criminal record? Anger issues? Substance problems? Anything I need to know before I put you near someone important?" Ethan's eyes did not harden. They simply settled. "No, sir. Just a daughter who needs me employed." The manager blinked, almost annoyed by the honesty. A black sedan pulled up then, smooth as a shadow, and the entire driveway seemed to adjust around it. Two assistants hurried forward. A security man touched his earpiece. Then Charlotte Whitmore stepped out in a charcoal coat, her blonde hair pinned neatly, her expression calm in the way powerful people learn to be calm when everyone is watching. Ethan did not know her name yet, not fully. He only knew that the air changed when she arrived. The manager straightened so quickly his smile looked painful. Miss Whitmore, good morning. Your regular driver had a family emergency, but we are arranging someone suitable. Charlotte's eyes moved from the manager to Ethan. Not dismissive. Not warm. Precise. Is he not suitable? The manager lowered his voice. He is applying, ma'am. I was just explaining the standard. Ethan looked down, not from shame, but from discipline. A person could survive a great deal by refusing to hand strangers the keys to his pride. Charlotte noticed that. She noticed the clean application, the repaired cuff, the posture that did not beg even while his life clearly needed mercy. What is your name? She asked. Ethan Walker, ma'am. Can you drive without talking? Yes, ma'am. Can you follow a changing schedule? Yes, ma'am. Can you keep your eyes on the road and your opinions to yourself? For the first time, the faintest hint of a smile touched his face. That is usually where I do my best work. The manager gave a nervous chuckle, but Charlotte did not laugh. She studied Ethan for one more second, as if searching for the part of him that did not match the rest. Hire him for 48 hours, she said. My route begins in 10 minutes. Ethan nodded, quiet as ever, but inside his coat pocket his phone vibrated with a message from Lily's school nurse asking whether he could pick up her prescription before evening. He typed back with one thumb, I will make it happen, sweetheart. Then he slipped the phone away, opened the rear door of the waiting SUV, and lowered his gaze with the practiced grace of a man who needed work, not pity. Charlotte stepped past him, carrying a world of money, secrets, and enemies behind her. Neither of them knew it yet, but the decision she made in that driveway would place the only man capable of seeing danger beside her before danger finally arrived. By the time Ethan guided the black SUV away from the Hawthorne Grand Hotel, the city had fully awakened, all glass towers, honking taxis, delivery trucks, and sunlight flashing off windows like clean silver. Charlotte Whitmore sat in the back seat with a tablet balanced on her knee, two phones beside her, and a voice as controlled as a locked door. Move the Seattle call to noon. Tell Mercer I will not approve the acquisition without the full audit. No, not partial. Full. Ethan kept both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2, eyes steady, shoulders relaxed. He did not interrupt when her assistant spoke through the speaker. He did not glance too often into the mirror. He drove as if silence were not emptiness, but a form of respect. Charlotte noticed that, though she tried not to. Most men around her wanted to be seen. They cleared their throats, offered advice, found excuses to mention old achievements, or laughed too loudly at jokes she had not made. Ethan simply changed lanes before traffic tightened, slowed before a cyclist drifted near the curb, and reached the first meeting 6 minutes early without once asking who she was trying to impress. You are quiet, Charlotte said after the second call ended. Yes, ma'am. That was not a compliment. I did not take it as an insult. She looked up from the tablet, studying the back of his head. There was gray at his temples, not much, just enough to suggest years had passed through him with heavy boots. Most drivers try to make conversation. Most drivers are probably better at it. That almost made her smile. Outside, the SUV passed boutiques, coffee shops, and a line of schoolchildren in yellow safety vests crossing at the light. Ethan's eyes softened for half a second, and Charlotte caught it in the rearview mirror. You have children? She asked. His fingers adjusted slightly on the wheel. One daughter. How old? 8. That is a busy age. It is a holy age, he said quietly, and the words settled in the vehicle with unexpected weight. Charlotte looked back down, but her focus had shifted. A man who called fatherhood holy did not belong to the cold language of her world, where families were often mentioned as scheduling conflicts, and love was something people protected with legal teams. Her own father had built an empire but rarely made it home before she was asleep. He had given her everything except the feeling of being chosen first. Ethan turned onto Madison Avenue without being told. This is not the route on the sheet, she said. Construction on 5th. Delivery truck blocking the right lane 2 blocks ahead. How do you know that? Reflection in the bus window. She turned, saw the bus sliding past them, and said nothing. A minute later, as they stopped near a crosswalk, Ethan's gaze moved to the side mirror and stayed there one beat too long. A gray sedan eased into traffic 3 cars back. Not close enough to alarm an ordinary driver. Not sloppy enough to be innocent. Something wrong? Charlotte asked. Probably not. That is not an answer. It is the safest answer until I know more. The gray sedan changed lanes when they changed lanes. It slowed when they slowed. Ethan did not tense, but the quiet inside the SUV changed texture, like air before a storm. Charlotte followed his eyes in the mirror. You think we are being followed? I think someone is interested in where you are going. She exhaled through her nose, irritated more than frightened. I have security for that. Ethan nodded. Yes. Ma'am. You do not sound reassured. Security watches what they are assigned to watch. And you? The light turned green. Ethan eased forward smoothly, leaving no sudden movement for the sedan to read. I watch what changes. For the first time that morning, Charlotte closed her tablet. The city kept moving around them, bright and loud and unaware, but inside the SUV, a billionaire who trusted almost no one found herself listening to a broke single father she had hired by accident. Ethan made 2 quiet turns past the hotel entrance he was supposed to use, and pulled beneath the covered side drive instead. The gray sedan continued straight, disappearing into traffic. Charlotte stared after it, then looked at Ethan in the mirror. You lost them. He put the vehicle in park and stepped out to open her door. No, ma'am, he said, his voice low, calm, and heavy with something she did not yet understand. I only made them show me they were there. The gala that evening glittered like a world Ethan had never asked to enter. Crystal lights hung above the Whitmore Foundation ballroom, throwing soft gold across white tablecloths, polished silverware, and faces trained to smile without revealing too much. Outside, a cold wind moved through the city streets, but inside, the air smelled of roses, expensive cologne, and money old enough to speak softly. Charlotte crossed the room with effortless control, greeting senators, investors, retired generals, and executives who leaned in as if standing closer to her might make them more important. Ethan remained near the side entrance in a dark driver's jacket provided by the hotel, hands folded in front of him, eyes moving without seeming to move. He counted exits. He noticed reflections in champagne glasses. He watched the gray sedan from earlier roll once past the front awning and disappear. Driver. A man's voice snapped beside him. Ethan turned. A tall donor in a navy tuxedo held an empty glass and wore the lazy smile of someone used to confusing service with submission. Get me another bourbon. Ethan's voice stayed even. Hotel staff is by the bar, sir. The man looked Ethan up and down. So you just stand here? Pretending to be useful? 2 younger men laughed. Ethan did not answer. The donor stepped closer, his smile thinning. What did she do, hire you from a bus station? Ethan looked at him with quiet patience. No, sir. A shelter? No, sir. Then where does Miss Whitmore find a man like you? Ethan glanced once toward Charlotte, who was speaking with a silver-haired general near the stage. Usually where people are still willing to work. The laughter stopped for half a second, then the donor's face tightened. He lifted his glass as if to gesture and spilled the last amber drops across Ethan's sleeve. Careful, the man said, not sorry at all. This fabric probably matters to you. Ethan looked down at the stain, then took a white napkin from a nearby tray and pressed it gently against his cuff. No anger. No performance. No wounded pride offered for the room to enjoy. Charlotte saw it from across the ballroom. She missed half of what the general said because she was watching Ethan absorb humiliation like a stone in deep water. When she reached him, her voice was sharp enough to cut crystal. Is there a problem? The donor smiled quickly. Not at all. Your driver and I were just getting acquainted. Ethan spoke before she could. No problem, ma'am. Charlotte turned to him. He spilled a drink on you. It will dry. And you are fine with that? Ethan folded the napkin once and set it aside. Not every insult deserves the honor of a response. The words landed between them with more force than anger would have. Charlotte had spent her life answering every slight, every doubt, every room that believed a young woman could inherit power but not command it. Ethan had done something she had never learned to do. He had let disrespect expose the other man, not himself. Before she could answer, Derek Voss appeared behind her, smooth, handsome, and perfectly timed. "Charlotte," he said warmly, placing one hand over his heart as if sincerity lived there. "I was hoping you would not spend the whole evening hiding behind contracts." Her expression cooled. "Derek, I did not realize you were invited. I still have friends on the board." His eyes slid to Ethan, friendly on the surface, measuring underneath. "New security? Driver," Ethan said. Derek smiled. "Of course." But Ethan saw the things other people missed. Derek's shoes were too quiet for the marble floor. His watch reflected the east exit twice. His right hand stayed near the inside of his jacket whenever anyone approached from behind. And when a waiter passed carrying a tray of glasses, Derek shifted not like a businessman making room, but like a trained man keeping his balance clear. Charlotte noticed Ethan's silence. "What is it?" she murmured. Ethan kept his eyes forward. "The man in the tuxedo is rude." "That is all?" "No, ma'am." Across the ballroom, Derek laughed with the general, charming everyone within 6 feet. Ethan watched him angle his body toward the private elevator, then glanced at the service corridor that led to the underground garage. The music swelled, soft and elegant, but beneath it Ethan heard the rhythm of something wrong. "Then what?" Charlotte asked. Ethan's voice lowered until only she could hear. "He is checking your exits." After the gala ended, after the donors drifted into waiting cars and the ballroom lights dimmed to a soft, golden haze, Ethan drove Charlotte back to the Hawthorne Grand Hotel without speaking of Derek Voss again. She asked him twice what he had seen, and twice he answered only enough to be honest. "Patterns," he said. "Not proof." That was the trouble with men like Ethan. They did not decorate fear to make it easier to sell. They simply placed it on the table and waited for truth to catch up. By 11:30, Charlotte had disappeared into a private elevator with her assistants, and Ethan had signed out at the service desk, returned the hotel jacket, and walked 6 blocks to the discount parking lot where his old pickup waited beneath a flickering light. The city had gone colder. Steam rose from manhole covers. Somewhere, a siren cried and faded. Ethan sat behind the wheel for a moment before starting the engine, not because he was tired, though he was, but because the quiet after danger always felt too familiar. At home, the apartment was dark except for the small star-shaped night light glowing beside Lily's bed. Mrs. Alvarez from next door had left a covered plate of chicken and rice on the counter with a note that said, "Eat, Marine," even though he had told her more than once he had not been a Marine in the way she thought. Ethan smiled faintly, washed his hands, and stepped into his daughter's room. Lily Walker slept curled beneath a faded quilt, one arm around a stuffed dolphin missing one button eye. Her prescription bag sat on the dresser. He had picked it up between routes, paid with cash, and pretended not to notice how little remained in his wallet afterward. "Daddy?" she whispered without opening her eyes. "I am here, sweetheart. Did the fancy lady like you?" He sat on the edge of the bed and brushed a curl from her forehead. "She hired me for another day." Lily opened one sleepy eye. "Then she is smart." Ethan's throat tightened in that quiet place no battlefield had ever reached. "You think so?" "I know so." She shifted closer to him. "Were people nice today?" He paused just long enough for a child to sense there was more behind the answer. "Some were." "And the ones who were not?" Ethan looked at the wall where Lily had taped a drawing of the two of them standing beside a blue ocean under a yellow sun. In the picture she had drawn him taller than every building. "They are still learning." Lily accepted that because children who love good fathers often believe the world can still be taught. When she fell back asleep, Ethan stayed there a while, listening to her breathing, letting the small sounds of home remind him who he had become. Not a call sign. Not a file number. Not a shadow moving through dangerous places for reasons strangers would never know. Just a father with rent due Friday and a little girl who believed he could fix anything. Later, in the kitchen, he opened the drawer where he kept things that did not belong to the life he had chosen. Beneath takeout menus, school forms, and a cracked flashlight lay a small wooden box. Inside was a folded photograph, edges worn from years of being touched and hidden again. Ethan stood younger in the picture, sunburned and unsmiling, surrounded by men in desert uniforms. Beside him was General Thomas Whitmore, Charlotte's father, one hand resting on Ethan's shoulder with the solemn pride of a man who knew a debt could exist without ever being spoken aloud. Under the photograph rested a silver trident pin wrapped in cloth, not displayed, not polished, not forgotten. Ethan did not pick it up. He only closed the box slowly, as if closing a door that never truly stayed shut. His phone buzzed on the table. A message from an unknown number appeared with only 6 words. "Stay away from Charlotte Whitmore tomorrow." Ethan stared at it, the apartment humming softly around him, the refrigerator ticking, the night pressing against the window. Then he looked toward Lily's room, toward the life he had promised to protect from old storms. For one breath, he wished he were just a driver. Then he deleted the message, turned off the kitchen light, and whispered into the dark. "Not if she is in danger." Morning arrived pale and restless over the city, turning the hotel windows silver while Ethan stood beside the SUV in the private garage, reading the day's schedule under the weak hum of fluorescent lights. Charlotte Whitmore had 3 stops: a closed-door strategy meeting downtown, a private visit to her father's old office, and then a late afternoon departure from a small airfield outside the city. On paper, it was simple. In Ethan's bones, it was wrong. The route had been changed overnight, not by Charlotte, not by the hotel, and not by any assistant whose name appeared on the security list. The second exit from the garage had been marked unavailable, though Ethan had walked past it 5 minutes earlier and found it clear. A camera above the service elevator pointed 2 inches too low, just enough to miss faces. And the guard posted near the loading ramp wore a brand new badge with old scratches on the clip. "Problem?" Charlotte asked as she entered, fastening one pearl earring with the cool focus of a woman preparing to sign away or save entire companies before lunch. Ethan folded the paper once. "Your schedule leaked." Her assistant, Nora, stopped mid-step. "That is impossible." Ethan looked at the camera. "No, ma'am. It is inconvenient." Charlotte's eyes narrowed. "Explain." The route change came from an internal account, but the timing is wrong. The garage exit listed as closed is open. The camera near your elevator has been adjusted. And the guard by the ramp is wearing a badge that did not come from this hotel. The guard looked over, as if he had heard just enough to feel seen. Charlotte's head of security, Martin Hale, strode toward them with a hard expression and a coffee cup in his hand. "Is the driver giving a briefing now?" Ethan did not react. "I am giving a warning." Hale laughed once. "You were hired to operate a vehicle, Mr. Walker. We handle threats. Then handle that one." Ethan nodded toward the guard. Hale glanced over, irritated. "He is cleared." "By whom?" "By my team." "Which member?" Hale hesitated half a second. That half-second was enough. Charlotte saw it, and something behind her polished calm shifted. "Martin," she said. "Answer him." Hale's jaw tightened. "I will verify." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice so the room did not turn into theater. "Change the route. No front entrance, no garage ramp, no airfield road after mile marker 12. Hale scoffed. "Mile marker 12? You studied the whole county overnight?" "No." Ethan opened the rear door for Charlotte. "I remember roads." Charlotte looked at him for a long breath. In her world, confidence usually came dressed in tailored suits and expensive certainty. Ethan's confidence came without decoration, and that made it harder to dismiss. "We changed the route," she said. Hale turned sharply. "Miss Whitmore, with respect, we cannot let a temporary driver override protocol." Protocol did not notice the camera. Her voice stayed calm, but the decision was final. Ethan waited until Charlotte was inside before closing the door. As he walked around the SUV, the suspicious guard turned his wrist to adjust his sleeve. There, just above the cuff, Ethan saw a small black tattoo shaped like a broken compass. His breath did not catch. His face did not change. But time tightened around him. He had seen that mark once before, years ago, on men who did not wear uniforms and did not care who paid them as long as the money cleared. Ethan slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and watched the guard in the mirror. Charlotte leaned forward slightly. "You recognize something?" "Yes, ma'am." "What was it?" The garage door rose in front of them, revealing a strip of gray morning and wet pavement beyond. Ethan guided the SUV out slowly, not toward the official route, but toward a side street lined with delivery vans and bare winter trees. "A mistake," he said. Charlotte's voice softened, though fear had begun to enter it honestly now. "Whose mistake?" Ethan checked the mirror once more. The guard was already on his phone. "Theirs," he said. "They let me see them before they were ready." The side route carried them away from the glass towers and toward the older edge of the city, where warehouses sat behind chain-link fences and the streets widened into long gray stretches of pavement. Rain began before noon, first as a mist on the windshield, then as steady lines that blurred the world into headlights and shadows. Ethan drove with both hands on the wheel, calm enough that Charlotte almost believed calm was possible. Martin Hale and the second security vehicle followed 2 car lengths behind, their lights dim in the mirror. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. No gray sedan. No false guard. No sign of Derek Voss. That was what troubled Ethan most. Real danger rarely announced itself twice. Charlotte watched him from the back seat, her tablet untouched beside her. "You have been quiet for 7 miles," she said. "Road is changing. It looks empty. That is one of the changes." She leaned toward the window. The city had fallen behind them. Ahead, the county road curved toward a low bridge over a drainage river swollen by rain. Beyond it lay the private airfield, still 12 miles out. Ethan eased off the accelerator. "Call your pilot," he said. Charlotte picked up her phone, then frowned. "No signal." Nora tried hers. "Mine is out too." The radio on Ethan's dash cracked once, then dissolved into static. Behind them, Martin's security vehicle slowed. Ahead, the bridge lights flickered and went dark one by one, as if someone were pinching out candles. "Seat belts," Ethan said. Charlotte obeyed before she realized she had. "What is happening?" "They moved the meeting place." "Who did?" Ethan's eyes sharpened on the road. "The people who did not want to meet me in traffic." At the mouth of the bridge, a white maintenance truck rolled from the right shoulder and stopped across both lanes. Its hazard lights blinked slowly in the rain. Behind the SUV, another vehicle appeared from a side access road and paused at an angle, not touching Martin's car, not forcing a crash, just closing the distance with quiet intention. Martin's voice burst through the security radio, rough with static. "Miss Whitmore, stay inside the vehicle." Ethan already had. He shifted the SUV into reverse, checked the mirrors, then stopped. Too narrow. Too controlled. Too deliberate. Charlotte's breath trembled once. "Ethan. Look at me," he said, not turning around. "Stay low, stay belted, and do exactly what I say. You are just one man." "No, ma'am." His voice was quiet, almost sad. "I am a father trying to keep my promise." 3 figures stepped from the maintenance truck wearing rain jackets and reflective vests, their faces shadowed beneath hoods. They moved with the false confidence of people pretending to be workers, but their eyes went to the windows, not the engine, not the roadblock, not the weather. One raised a hand as if signaling for help. Ethan lowered his window only 2 inches. "Bridge closed?" he asked. The man came closer. "Step out, sir. We need to redirect you." "No, sir, this is county authority." Ethan looked at the clean boots, the dry gloves, the vests with no county seal. "Then name the county." The man froze for less than a second. Ethan closed the window. That second told the whole story. The rear door handle clicked as someone outside tried it. Charlotte gasped. Ethan pressed the lock button, then reached beneath the dash and activated the emergency beacon he had quietly connected that morning to Charlotte's security transponder. It would not call loudly. It would not save them immediately. But it would tell the right people where truth had finally surfaced. "What did you do?" Nora whispered. "Asked for witnesses," Ethan said. Then the man at the window slammed a palm against the glass. "Open the door, driver." Ethan removed his tie and wrapped it around the steering wheel grip, not for show, not for drama, but because rain, fear, and slippery hands could ruin clean decisions. Charlotte stared at him as if seeing 2 lives inside one man, the poor driver who opened doors with humility, and the silent professional who had been reading every shadow since sunrise. "Were you military?" she asked. Ethan did not answer directly. Outside, Martin shouted something, and the rain swallowed half of it. The men near the truck spread out, expecting panic, expecting obedience, expecting a driver who would fold under pressure. Ethan put the SUV into gear and angled the wheels with careful precision. "Miss Whitmore," he said, "when I move, keep your head down. And you?" The rain rolled down the windshield in silver threads. Ethan looked at the blocked bridge, the dark road, and the reflection of a familiar black compass tattoo on the wrist of the man reaching for the door. His voice remained steady, full of dignity, full of the kind of grace that does not ask to be admired before it acts. "I am going to make sure you get home." Ethan did not rush, and that was what frightened Charlotte most. Panic would have made sense. Panic would have belonged to the rain, the blocked bridge, the darkened lights, and the strangers closing in around the SUV. But Ethan moved with a quiet order that seemed almost impossible under pressure. He lowered the window 1 inch again, just enough for his voice to pass through. "You need to clear the lane." The man in the reflective vest smiled without warmth. "You need to step out." "No, last chance, driver." Ethan's eyes shifted to the mirror. Martin's security team had been contained behind them, confused by the second vehicle and the dead radios, but not injured. That mattered. Nobody needed to be hurt for courage to be real. Charlotte watched Ethan's hand move beneath the steering column, then to the console, then back to the wheel. Every motion was small, purposeful, clean. The SUV's headlights flashed twice, then stayed bright, washing the rain-soaked bridge in white light. The men outside turned their faces away for half a breath. Ethan used that half breath. The vehicle rolled forward, not fast, not wild, just angled with enough precision to force space where there had been none. A trash barrel tipped. A cone slid under the bumper. The maintenance truck's driver panicked and shifted a few feet too far toward the rail. Ethan stopped instantly. "No," he said. Charlotte kept her head low. Nora covered her mouth to keep from crying out. The SUV slipped through the narrow opening with inches to spare, tires hissing over wet pavement, side mirror folding inward against a plastic barrier. Behind them, shouts rose and tangled with thunder. Ethan did not look pleased. He looked burdened. At the far end of the bridge, another black car blocked the exit. Its door opened, and Derek Voss stepped out under a large umbrella, dry, composed, and smiling like a man greeting guests at a private club. Ethan braked slowly. Charlotte's face went pale. "Derek." Derek tilted his head toward the windshield. "Hello, Charlotte." "And hello to you, Ghost Harbor." The name entered the SUV like a ghost from another life. Ethan's hands remained on the wheel, but something in the air changed. Nora looked from Charlotte to Ethan, confused. Charlotte whispered, "What did he call you?" Derek stepped closer, rain tapping softly on his umbrella. "He did not tell you." "Of course he did not. Men like him bury the truth until someone with a shovel arrives." Ethan opened his door and stepped out into the rain. He did not slam it. He did not posture. He simply stood between Derek and the back seat, the same way he had stood between the world and every innocent person he had ever refused to abandon. Derek laughed quietly. "Ethan Walker. Former Navy Special Operations. Decorated. Classified record. The kind of man generals trusted when failure was not allowed." Charlotte stared at Ethan through the rain-streaked glass, and every small thing she had noticed suddenly rearranged itself. The way he watched exits, the way he read people, the way silence sat on him not like fear, but discipline. "You disappeared," Derek continued. "A legend hiding in a cheap apartment, driving strangers around for rent money." Ethan's voice stayed low. "I went home to raise my daughter. You became nothing." "No." Ethan looked at him then, not with anger, but with the steady sorrow of a man who had learned the cost of pride. "I became responsible." For once, Derek's smile thinned. In the distance, faint but growing, sirens began to rise. The emergency beacon had found its witnesses. Derek heard them too, and his eyes flicked toward the road behind Ethan. "You planned that. I hoped you would choose the better road. You always were sentimental. And you always mistook patience for weakness." Red and blue lights appeared through the sheets of rain, first blurred, then bright. Federal vehicles rolled toward the bridge from the county road, joined by state police and Charlotte's recovered security detail. The men in reflective vests lowered their hands and backed away, suddenly less certain of the story they had been paid to perform. Derek stood still, trapped not by force, but by exposure. A tall federal agent stepped from the lead vehicle, rain running off his jacket. He looked at Ethan, recognition crossing his face with quiet respect. Then, in front of Charlotte, Martin, Nora, Derek, and every man who had called him only a driver, the agent straightened and said, "Commander Walker, it is an honor." The bridge went silent except for the rain. Charlotte opened the rear door and stepped out slowly, her eyes fixed on Ethan as if she were seeing him for the first time and regretting every second she had not looked closer. Ethan did not accept the praise with a smile. He only turned back toward her, soaked, tired, and humble, and said, "Are you all right, ma'am?" That was when Charlotte understood the truth. His past had saved her, but his character had been protecting her from the beginning. 3 weeks later, the ballroom at the Whitmore Foundation looked nothing like the night Ethan had stood beside the service entrance with a stained sleeve and a lowered gaze. The same chandeliers glowed overhead, the same marble floors reflected the same expensive shoes, and many of the same people had returned with softer voices and careful faces. The donor who had mocked Ethan did not stand near the front. This time, Martin Hale stood quietly along the wall, no longer proud enough to ignore warnings from men without titles. Federal investigators had already taken Derek Voss into custody, and the story had traveled farther than Charlotte wanted, through boardrooms, newsrooms, and military circles where some names are spoken only after a respectful pause. But Charlotte had not called the gathering to celebrate scandal. She had called it to tell the truth. Ethan sat in the last row with Lily beside him, her small hand tucked inside his. He wore the same old navy coat, brushed clean, cuffs still repaired by hand. Lily wore a blue dress Mrs. Alvarez had helped pick out, and she kept staring at the ceiling as if the lights were stars that had decided to come indoors. "Daddy," she whispered, "are all these people here for you?" Ethan leaned close. "No, sweetheart. They are here because Miss Whitmore asked them to be. But she keeps looking at you." He did not answer, because Charlotte had stepped to the microphone. For once, there was no tablet in her hand, no assistant at her shoulder, no corporate armor except the truth she had chosen to carry publicly. "My father used to tell me that character is what remains when power is stripped away," she began. "I thought I understood that. I did not." The room grew still. Even the cameras seemed quieter. Charlotte looked over the crowd, then toward the last row. "I spent years surrounded by people paid to protect me, advise me, flatter me, and fear me. Yet when danger came, the person who saw it first was the one man everyone else had underestimated." Ethan lowered his eyes. Lily squeezed his hand harder. Charlotte continued, her voice steady but warmer now. "He did not ask for recognition. He did not announce his past. He did not use his service as a crown. He opened doors, watched roads, protected lives, and went home each night to be a father. That kind of dignity cannot be bought. It can only be lived." A murmur moved through the ballroom, not gossip this time, but recognition. Then the federal agent from the bridge stepped forward and placed a small framed commendation on the table beside Charlotte. She did not read every classified line. She did not need to. "There are details I am not permitted to share," she said, "but I can say this. Ethan Walker served this country with honor, and when life gave him silence instead of applause, he still chose grace." The room turned toward him. Ethan wanted to disappear. Not from shame, but from habit. For years, invisibility had kept his daughter safe and his grief manageable. But Lily stood first. She was only 8 years old, small beneath the chandeliers, yet when she began to clap, the sound carried like a bell. Mrs. Alvarez stood next. Then Nora. Then Martin. Then the generals, the executives, the donors, and finally the entire room rose until applause filled the place where laughter had once wounded him. Ethan's eyes reddened, but he did not break. Charlotte walked down from the stage and stopped before him. "Mr. Walker," she said softly, "my company has a foundation for veterans and their families. I would like you to lead it, if you are willing. Not as charity. As trust." Ethan looked at Lily, then at the repaired cuffs of his coat, then at Charlotte, whose eyes no longer carried only power, but respect. "I do not know if I belong in rooms like this," he said. Charlotte smiled gently. "Maybe rooms like this need men like you." Silence followed, deep and clean, the kind of silence that does not embarrass, but honors. Lily leaned against her father and whispered, "Daddy, they know now?" Ethan held her close, feeling the weight of old wars loosen, not vanish, but finally make room for something tender. He had not saved Charlotte for wealth, position, or praise. He had saved her because a life was in front of him, and goodness, when it is real, does not stop to ask what it will receive in return. That evening, as father and daughter stepped out into the cool city air, Charlotte walked beside them without bodyguards crowding the space between. The world had not become perfect. Bills still existed. Grief still had its quiet hours. But Ethan Walker was no longer just a shadow at the edge of other people's importance. He was seen, not because he shouted, but because quiet dignity had finally spoken loud enough for the whole room to hear.